Hello, and welcome to How-To Diorama. I am Bill, and today we're going to talk about my World War One trench diorama. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun because I had some really kind of cool stuff that I posted earlier this week on like my shorts, and it's this little jig that I made, and this little jig is for making steel pickets. So in World War One, to support the barbed wire, they had steel pickets. They also had wood ones, and they had all kinds of stuff cobbled together because it was such a long war, and movement back and forth, and bombs going off. There was just stuff everywhere. But this was one of the primary things. Now, I've hand bent these before, and it was just a real pain. So by making this little jig this week, it was just totally cool. It just, I could like knock them out and they were all the same. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I got a little like 9-minute video that we're going to go through today. But I want to say hello to folks that have joined us. Martin was in earlier. And then Martin, almost done, Bill. And now I have the milliput all over my iPad. That's not good. Martin is working on his Falk, his MAK 120 scale Falk, and it's really coming on cool. If you haven't seen Martin Hulst on Facebook, I was about to say Instagram because I can't remember if you're on Instagram too, Martin, but his stuff is brilliant. So go check out Martin. Eric is here. Howdy, Bill. Howdy, all. Thanks very much for coming in, Eric. That's really, really cool. John is here. Hello there, everyone. And hello to you, John. Thanks very much for coming in. Paul is here. Hello, Paul. And Paul and Martin are coming from, all the way over in Europe. So that's really kind of cool. I really think that's neat. Maybe it's just because I'm a small town person, But anyway, thank you very, very much. So yeah, like I said, today it's all about those pickets. Now, the other thing that I did was I built these little lights. So I'm working on the top of the trench now. So I started when I first started building the diorama. I kind of started at the top and I got the trench to a certain point, and then I went subterranean, and then and did like the overall stuff, right? I just carving out the rooms and then doing big stuff. Then once I had all the big stuff, kind of like I had on the top, then I started detailing. And in the past months, yeah, it's been months now. It's just like week, I don't know, 12 or 14. No, 12 or 13, I think. I just started adding detail and moving my way up. Well, now I'm back to the top. And so I need to add lights there. And I need to detail that just as much as I've detailed the underground stuff. Now that's key, because if you think about it, the trench is relatively simple, and I've got all this jazz going on downstairs. If it's not balanced, if it doesn't, look proportionally detailed, it's going to look weird. So there's just as much detail that's going to go up here in the top trenches, and the associated stuff in the trench and on top of the trench, the barbed wire and the pickets and all that. So all that kind of stuff is going to receive the same level of detail as I've done in the rooms. When you think the rooms, you can pack a whole lot more stuff in, but actually, no, there's going to be a lot. So one of the things that I did is I made these little lanterns. I needed some lighting, like I've done below. I needed some lighting in the trench. So I made 9 little lanterns out of 1mm LEDs, and I'll show you that today. I mean, the basic process. I'm not going to go into as much detail because it's something I've shown before. But if anybody, like if you see me doing something and you're like, man, I'd really like to get a detailed explanation or a video on how that's done, well, just throw it this way. I'm trying to increase my longer form videos that are more detailed. Now, the whole time I've been building this, I've been taking videos of every single aspect of the build. And there is a video coming up, but I'm really super backlogged on those long form videos. I just got one out recently that took me a couple of months. So anyway, the point is I can make shorter videos on a process or a procedure, and I can put that up as a long form. And I typically am going to do that on Saturdays. And so look for that. Anyway, so after all of that, let's dive into this. And I got some more people that came in, and I'd just like to say hello. Hey, Doug came in. Hello from North Carolina. Thanks very much, Doug. I think we saw you last week or maybe the week before. And I really appreciate you coming on. That's really, really cool. And folks, if you haven't, man, I feel like I'm just dragging this out, which I hate when people are doing videos. If you haven't, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. And, it helps me do this. So let's now, without further ado, let's go and take a look at some of the pictures that I put together for you. And then we're also going to do that video. So here I start out and I like to talk about, this, and I don't think I've pardon me, talked about this enough. And I want to get this across. I am calling this thing the World War I trench diorama, but that's not a name for it. I like to name these things. And so this is something that I would propose to you. Does anybody have any ideas of what you would think of naming it? That might be fun. I don't know. It's up to you guys. I will eventually name it, but it's a fictional story based on historical accounts. This is an updated picture, by the way. And the subjects are sappers, which in this case we're using as Anzac miners, but anybody down here, anything below ground is really called sappers. But the specifics of the mining operations were done by a lot of Anzac miners. That's the Australian and New Zealand miners that they were recruited specifically for that task. And then it's also about the Livens Large Gallery Flame Projector. And that was one of the main things I wanted to get across. This Livens Large Gallery Flame Projector, this thing is 56 feet long. It's a massive thing. It was, deployed underground. Some people have asked, boy, those tunnels are pretty big. Well, this is what they're meant to accommodate. I do have one of the tunnels that I have in the down below, down here, which is just a listening tunnel. And it is of a smaller size. It kind of goes down and gets smaller. And that's like a listening point. One of the things that I found that they had in World War I doing research, but also just watching movies. Wonderful way to do it. I think Eric said that he watched Beneath Hill 60 recently. Now he's saying right here, Fire Down Below. Is that another movie, Eric, that possibly shows this stuff? But the point is, wherever you're getting your information, I kind of use that as information. I don't base everything specifically on one thing. I try to get a bunch of information together and then make it into something that it's the story that I'm telling. So all that being said, I am still looking for a name for this. Name for your diary. Oh, Fire Down Below. That's a really good idea. See, what the heck am I thinking, Eric? I don't know. That's great. I like that idea. Fire Down Below. I'd like to kind of get a little more World War I-ish, if that makes sense. That's kind of what I'm looking for, but I like Fire Down Below. I'm just saying I want something that really brings in the World War I aspect to it, because I want people to understand that going right up to it. Helps set the date. So anyway, but I like that. Thanks very much. Livens Lament. Ooh, I like that, John. That's a really good one too. So we got two great suggestions. So that's fantastic, folks. Keep them coming. And I'd really appreciate it. And when I've done things like this, I try to credit folks for their ideas. When I get wonderful ideas for my dioramas, for the things that I build or whatever, even a whole concept or something like that, that's kind of a level of involvement that I appreciate greatly. And so I will credit you that, when you're doing it. Even at the shows, I have little placards on some of my old builds. And on that placard, I'll give credit if something's called out specific to a person. And I think that's fun, because I really do appreciate the ideas, and I really do appreciate the feedback and input that I get from folks. I think the best idea wins. Always. Okay, so thank you very much, John and Eric. I think that's great. So, I am going to get back to these slides real quick, because I really do want to show you what I did this week, and that's what's coming up, of course. So here is just another broken down view so you can see some of the elements of that Livens large gallery flame projector. Now, this is a reference picture that I found online. I found it in multiple places. I did not see any accreditation needs for that, but I did see, it's made by Malby and Sons Limited. So I'm giving them the credit. They drew it. But this is a diagram of what I'm making. And it's very nice. It's very simple. I will give a link to one of the locations where I found it so you can download it yourself. I'm not going to distribute this, but the overall length of the large one is the one that I made because I figured, heck, if I want the small ones, I can just kind of cut them down. The large one is 5'7" tall. And to further that, I found some pictures that I'll show once I get into the little video that I'm going to show, the build. And that'll show you, what they looked like in real time with some soldiers carrying them in World War I. So we'll get to that. But before that, I want to show you, because that'll be the video. Before that, I want to show you what I did last week. And the very first thing I did was I lit this thing. So I don't know if I can give you a grounding. Let me go back to just me. And that might be easier. In the diorama, what I'm trying to show is this room down here in the bottom. So now that is the testing lab where they're testing all the things that they're developing for the Livens large gallery flame projector. And this is supposed to be an underground testing lab like, James Bond, so it's that kind of a thing. So this would be like Q's lab that you go into. So what we're looking at here are all the things that they did in that lab. And previously, I just didn't have enough lighting in here. It just did not look good. The Livens gun itself, I put a light directly over it. You can see it there and gives me a lot more perspective. I put a light in the back corner and right here in front of the shelf so you can kind of see down that long hallway. So I lit the heck out of this thing, and I think that helps a lot. The other thing I want to make note of is, last week I had also put dirt in the floors, and I'm just thrilled with the dirt. This dirt idea of bringing that into here, I just, I had the messy in the past. I had my dioramas, kind of so they showed weather, but I didn't have a lot of dirt and grunge. And that all came from Neil Bullard. He does, I'm going to mess this up, 1/6 scale, 1/12. When he's on, he corrects me. But it's just, if there's a number involved, I am mentally challenged. So I don't know exactly the scale he does, but they're big scale, right? They're like large figures. And he does the most amazing, he's working on it right now, as a matter of fact, World War I diorama. The way he places things, the way he's built it up, the way he shoots it, just the pictures, because I love how people represent what they build by taking very good shots. He's got smoke elements in there, it's just beautiful. Just great stuff. Kind of like John Harrison. My friend John Harrison, I did a video on him last week, and just great stuff. Oh, and John Robeck just chimed in. Thank you very much, John. It is 1/6 scale is what Neil Bullard does his stuff in. And so he shows his World War I diorama, and it is just mud. And man, you can feel that mud. That mud is just everywhere. It permeates everything. You can barely see the duck boards on the bottom, where they're walking. Everybody has mud on them. Beautiful diorama. Absolutely beautiful. And so that was where I said, hey, I got to do this to mine. And so, that's that thing about getting suggestions, getting feedback, getting ideas from, doing your research and looking at other videos and doing some reading and looking at pictures. And I'd seen the mud in the pictures, but it just never connected. I mean, I don't know if that's happened to you, but you're working on something and you see it and it's like, well, of course that makes sense. Why wouldn't I have done that? But you see someone else do it and do it so well that you're like, well, then there you go. So maybe, I hope, gosh, I can bring some of that to you. Neil has helped me on that. So enough just rambling. So back here, I put the mud and the dirt in, and then I cleared the spots, where traffic would be. And I really think it helps a lot. And I really think it adds to the scene, to what I'm trying to represent, which is, a laboratory, underground in the trenches during World War One. Again, complete fantasy. This is not a real thing. I mean, the Livens Large Gallery Flame Projector is real, right? That happened. It was deployed 4 times against the Germans. It was invented by Captain William Livens. But I'm I'm kind of like, Wild Wild West, the old television show Wild Wild West. It was just so fun and over the top, and they had all these great gadgets in this Victorian area, kind of going into the World War One. I just love that kind of thing, and so that's really what this is. It's not a one-to-one. This is exactly what happened. This is my movie, if you will, interpretation of those events. So back to it here. After that, these are the lights that I made. So I talked about this a little bit ago. So these are 1 millimeter LEDs that I built into these little lanterns, and it wasn't very difficult to do, but it was a bit tedious. I made 9. I didn't want an even number. Sometimes if I look at something, there's an even number, I'm like, meh, why? I don't know why, but I wanted an odd number just for placement. Oops, wrong way. And so basically what it is, this is the basic lamp or lantern that I came up with, and it's the plastic tubing that you get on the end of your very small liner paintbrushes. So they come with a plastic protector. Well, those things are great. They have different sizes brushes, but there are clear ones and there are ones that are kind of smoked or whatever. I use the clear ones. Both will work. And so I cut them to a specific length. I just used some styrene to build up these very, very simple, as you can tell, lanterns. And they're upside down because that's how I applied the next stuff that I'm working on, which is I needed to build these little cages. So this is the same 24 gauge steel wire. 28 gauge. 28 gauge. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. It is 32 gauge steel wire, super thin stuff. And I cut that. I put it, 4 around the outside of the clear tubing. And then I took one and I kind of twisted around there to kind of cinch it up around the outside. Now I glued the straight ones on there first. Once they were done drying glue, then I did the little wrap around and then cinched it down. And then I was able to clip it off, put the little hanging handle on the top, and then just paint them up. And I kind of did them silver. They look pretty rough, but they're also pretty tiny. And I think the effect that they will make is just going to be great. So this is the little jig that I originally made to make pickets. And so again, if you're not familiar with these pickets, it's how they support the barbed wire in World War One. They had wooden pickets. They had different kinds of picket holders, and like just wood sticks and stuff like that. Because over the 4 years more of that buildup and then the actual war and stuff like that, so much barbed wire was put up. And then as the lines would fluctuate, and bombs and all kinds of, dead man's land, all that kind of stuff, no man's land, if you want to call it that. There was just a lot going on, but this was a primary one. This one was throughout the war. They used this. And so it was a standardized thing. And so because it was standardized, that told me I could make something in a jig that would be standardized. And so that's what this is. So I just made this little jig, and then I have a full video that I'm going to go and show you. Now, John Hayes has a quick question here. So let's get to John. Hi, what methods can make diorama more interactive? Be cool to have movement, sound, computer fans acting a slight wind to blow fabric cloth around and other materials. Maybe not plausible. I think it is very plausible, John, and I think that's a great idea. I have like little servos you can get. So okay, this is a great question, and so let's take it a little bit further. One of the things that I like about the diorama building is the electronics. It's really helped me, and it started with just lighting. I saw lighting and I saw, boy, that can really enhance my diorama. But to really enhance the diorama, I needed to control that space. I needed an underground room. Okay. So that's how I went underground. I liked the light and I saw what it could do, but on a surface diorama, the light, it's hard to be effective unless you're in a very low light element. Well, at a model show or a display, you're not in a low light element. So I tried to create one. Okay. Number one, that moved me below ground. So now that I have this below ground element, I can control the lighting, which means I can control the shadows, because that's what you're really doing with lighting. You're creating shadows and you're controlling that to do the effect that you want. But then I learned that I can use lighting for not just like illuminating, but I can use lighting as an effect, meaning that I can bounce it off something, or I can highlight something, or I can bring your eye somewhere that I want you to go with the light. So that was and then from that effect, then I started thinking about, well, what other effects can I do? Well, for years, people have been putting very, very small motors into engine nacelles on aircraft to make the prop spin, and it's a wonderful effect. There's a B-17, or maybe it's a 24, I don't know, but it has it firing up, and it's this whole electronics package. Look it up online. It's amazing. I love those effects. Blinking lights are an effect. And when you extrapolate that further to small fans and even servos, because that's what I did, I found a local electronics supply that has these kind of electronic projects that you can buy the componentry for, you can buy little kits for, you can get great information. So if you're interested in this, and like John's saying, these things can enhance your diorama to the extent that you want it to. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a very creative thing. These things, these elements you would add to it, little fans, little servos, literally like a servo in an RC car or something like that, but it's just an actuator. You just on, off. Through an Arduino, which I also promote and like. I mean, I don't promote it because I'm not paid or anything. I'm just saying I think it's a really fun element for modeling and diorama building. I think all of that stuff really needs to be thought about if you're really getting into this, because it is fun. And the movement draws the eye. So I think it's great. It is plausible. It's just however far you want to take it. I've been working on this, like I said, 12, 13 weeks at this point. A lot of people don't want to put that kind of a time block on their time. And I work on this 7 days a week, folks. This is my total gig. I'm a YouTuber. That's what I do. And so, but my medium is diorama building, and I want to teach people how to do diorama building. And I also do consulting about diorama. So everything I do now is focused around diorama building. To add new elements to it, to add something interesting, brilliant stuff, John. Love it. So if you have more ideas like that, folks, come up with them and also use them yourself. Hey, Neil is here. Neil, hello. We were talking about you earlier. It was all good. I need something to drink, or I'm going to get dry. And we were talking, excuse me, about your great World War I diorama. The neat thing is Neil and I have been talking for a long time, and he's been very patient with me while I finish some projects so that I could get him on the show. So that's what we're working on. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about that. So thanks very much for coming on, Neil, and great to see you. John, you almost have to make the diorama in a large shadow box to create your own environment. I agree, and that's why I do the subterranean elements. That's why it's a way to control it. Do I want to do a cave? Sure. I think a cave would be great. I have an idea of, and I just haven't found the right figures to do it yet, but I have an idea of a Viking quest. And I love the movie, The 13th Warrior. I think it's just a really fun movie with Antonio Banderas. And he's working with Vikings, and it's a whole Viking adventure movie if you haven't seen it. I think it's a very, very good movie. I really, really enjoy it. And from that, I'd like to do a little bit of a diorama where it has part of a Viking ship, show that just like cut off, but like just the nose of a Viking ship. And then they enter into a cave and an underground element. Creating those underground elements is a really fun way to kind of express yourself and control the view of the viewer. So if you're trying to tell a specific story by controlling the light, by controlling the shadows, by controlling everything that they see within that and the direction that they see from, really add some advantages to it. It's that old shadow box or box diorama idea that Shep Payne thought was he thought that was the pinnacle of diorama building. I've heard Jim DeRogatis say this on boxdiorama.com, and he's also got a really nice podcast. But that's what they said was Shep Payne, which was considered the top diorama builder for decades, still today. He said that. So I think this is an interpretation of that. Basically, that's a box diorama right there, and then so is that, and then so is that. But I'm doing him in a little bit more fuller form to try to show a complete story or something. I kind of think of it as something I want to be able to walk through. So there you go. So thanks very much, John. Great comments today. Can't wait to see you do a diorama Kina, like Christmas calendar, open doors, seeing different scenes. That's a really cool idea. I like that. We get those little the event calendars and for our nieces and nephews and cousins, and that's our present. And boy, I got to tell you, that is so fun. And I love that idea where you open something to a surprise. And I've seen that in some dioramas. It's a really neat effect. So as a matter of fact, I was thinking about doing that on Wolfenstein before I went in the direction I did. And I bought a bunch of little bit of those hinges. But thanks very much, John. And I appreciate you chiming in. And folks, anybody, any question, anytime, I hope it doesn't slow this down. I hope you're not waiting on something. Well, I hope you are kind of waiting on something, because I got some kind of cool stuff to show. But I really love the interaction. I really love to hear from you. I really like to hear your ideas because I get ideas from that. And sometimes I'll take that idea and it goes in the diorama. We talked about that a little bit earlier. So let's go back and look at this, because this jig really helped a lot. Now, these above here, these are the steel pickets. They are made from 24 gauge dark annealed steel wire. And annealed wire is basically heated, let cool at room temperature, and because of that, it's soft. There is a point in this where I will take these once they're done being bent up, and I didn't include that video today because it was just too long, but I heat them up to red, I drop them in water, quench them real quickly, and that quick change makes them brittle, but it makes them a little bit more easy to work with when I get on the diorama, because they're not so bendy. I can still bend them, but they're not quite as flexible as just the plain annealed wire. So I use annealed wire. I made this jig. It's very simple. It's taken directly from the reference material that I showed you earlier. Here's just a close-up shot of it. They're small brass pins. You don't want them too long because you don't want to be fishing the wire up and over it and stuff like that when you're bending it. And then the bottom one is the new one that I made in the video that I'm going to show next. And it's just a little bit better because there's a cut place, so you're not cutting into the wood. And so that's what that is. So let us now go and take a look at this video. I'll stop the video as it's playing and talk to you about stuff, certainly. But let's just go take a look. Add to screen, and I can make me much smaller. So I need to go back. Sorry about that. So let's pause there. These are, can you guys hear me? It says sometimes it mutes, but these are the pickets that I'm making that are being used. And you see how big they are. These things are 5 foot 7 inches long. Steel. It's 1/2 inch steel bar. It's not small bar, 1/2 inch steel bar. These things were not light. They were heavy. A 1/2 inch steel bar like that would, in that bundle, I don't know how much it weighs, but yeah, that's as many as you want to carry. So they were heavy. So let's keep looking here. There is our drawing. Brass, and I have a lot of brass. If you don't have brass around, you could like using brass, and I have a lot of brass. If you don't have brass around, you could certainly use a brass nail, but I would say try to get it 1/16 of an inch. I did not scientifically do this. I used my 1/35 scale and just went off of that. So that's how I'm going to show you how to do it. So per our drawing, the overall length from there to there is 5 foot 7 inches. So that's what I'm going to do first on here is I'm going to get 5 foot 7 inches. 1 foot 6 inches of that is the auger. So that's how I'm going to kind of set this. So in 1/35 scale, that's 1 foot 6 inches right there. So I'm going to place that there. And then I'm going to take my pencil and up from that, I want to go 10 inches. That's 10 inches right there, okay? So once I've got that marked, and I'm also going to do this, I'm going to take just a line so we can keep everything on the same line here. Once I've got that marked, I'm going to take some small calipers that I have, and I'm going to set those to 10 inches on here. These are dividers, not calipers. Sorry about that. There we go. Now set this right there. I'm going to walk it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so when I have my 5 foot 7 inch mark, now what I want to do there is I want to drill a little hole, because right there is where I'm going to cut, you know, to cut it off. And so if I have a little hole there, I can put this in. It's just a little easier to get in there. And then a little bit beyond that, like right there, I want this hole. Now that's quite a small hole. That's not a big hole at all. That is this hole. Okay, so that's the part, you know, where we put this hole, or this, like that. So what I'm going to do now is, I want to see how deep that's going. Yeah, that's deep enough. Now I need to drill these 1/16, and then that, I don't know how big I'll do that, but I'll figure it out over the drill press. Okay, so those are the top holes. Now I got to do one hole right on the end. I have to go really slow here, but I had to speed it up. Okay, so now I've got the holes. So I drilled the hole in the end, and then these 4 holes, those are all 1/16. That was like 13/64 or something like that, and that's really non-specific. It's just that allows me to get the, you know, the things down there to cut. That's all that's for. On this one, I didn't do that, and it just kind of puts a hole in the wood. It's no big deal, but I thought that'd be kind of nice. And then I've got the little tiny hole, and heck, I don't even know what that is. 1/32. Okay, so I am going to take my brass rod, and I'm just going to cut some pieces off that I can drive into those. I'm using gap filling super glue, and just a little bit on there. Now, because these are cut on the end, you know, like a wedge, you don't want to hammer in real hard, because you can split your wood real easy. So you just want to get them in there so they're nice and stable and sturdy. you know, you're not trying to drive these things like you would a nail. And now I want a longer piece because remember this piece is specific in length. So once this has been driven home, I'm going to want to trim it to a very specific length. This one also got to be super careful because it's easy to split. So as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go take this to my sander and blunt that end a little bit. Okay, so all I did there was I just kind of blunted that end so it's not going to want to drive through. Not a lot of super glue on there, but if I can get it started and then just, that's it, just tap it in. So that's all of the brass that I have to put in it. Now I need to trim them. So now that I have this, you'll notice here they're short because I'm wrapping stuff around them. I just need them, you know, short enough to do that. I don't want something long that I have to, you know, get, and I need to be able to pull it off. So these need to be cut really far down. So these big wire cutters are much better for this. I'm going to cut those down to about 1/8 of an inch because I still have to sand them. I still want to try to round off the ends. So I'm going to do that. Well, we'll get that in a minute. But now I'm going to take this over to sander and get these guys. Okay, so these guys are super short now, and that's what I want, you know, just like these. But I do want to try to kind of round over the brass so it's not so sharp. That's nice. See, they're a little bit smoother. You don't have to go to that, you know, extent. You can just file them off and it's fine. Okay, so we're just about done. All we have to do is get that to the proper length. That's my cutoff point, right in the middle of that hole, where I will mark this to be cut off right there. Okay, I'm going to take this. Okay, so 5'7" right there. So now let's give it a shot. See if it works. I am going to take about 5 inches of wire, put it in there, come in and wrap it around, wrap it around, wrap it around, wrap it around. When we get here, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That should go to the end. If it's a little short, like I did there, just pull it. You open up the auger a little bit and clip it there. And here, I'm going to do this real quick before I clip. That makes it nice and straight. And then, see that line that goes right through the middle of that hole? That's where I'm going to clip because that is the point where it's 5'7". And then I just use my tweezers to pry it off. And you have a World War I picket. So there we go. I hope that was cool. You know, for me, and you know, I made a whole bunch of them because when I'm doing the top, you know, the first World War I diorama I did in 2019, loved it. It was just awesome. And when I did the barbed wire, I got to tell you, you can't have enough. You just can't have enough. you're gonna have your barbed wire that's all set up in a line, right? And these things support 4 lines of barbed wire. Okay. So I'm gonna have these things up in picket lines and suspending barbed wire, 4 rows. Then there's got to have to be a secondary line behind it. Then there's going to have to be damaged ones. In places, and a lot of the pictures you'd see on the battlefield, quite possibly a vehicle had previously gone through there. Well, when the tanks, like the Mark IVs and the Mark I's, and the FT-17s, when they went through barbed wire, they would bundle barbed wire up in their tracks, and then it would just be these massive, huge things. They'd cut it away and they get it out and they just leave it. And then they put more barbed wire up around it. So I'm going to do a lot of barbed wire. These are going to be part of it. So by having something like a jig, it allows you to knock something out like that very quickly, consistently, and then you modify it as you mount it to the diorama. Okay. So, well, that's about it. That's what I had today. I really want to talk about that. Oh, there is some more stuff I want to talk about, actually. But I mean, if you have questions about it, I'd love to hear it. I love, your feedback, because this jig works for me. There's certainly some things that could be improved. And if you've got a jig or a methodology that you've come up with, a technique that you use to do your stuff, I'd love to hear about it. I think it would be great. But I want to talk about this time of year. So this time of year for me, it's starting into like the real big time model building type of year, or time of year. It's a little colder out. I feel guilty when I'm inside in the summertime. It's super nice out. I think I need to be doing the yard or being outside, just, enjoying it a little bit. But I'm in here building. I have none of that feeling in the wintertime. And it's wonderful. The long nights, the early mornings, I like to get out here. It's dark, and like to take that at least in the wintertime, I take a little bit of time in the morning and maybe read. I have a fun book that I have read at least once a year since '86. And it's just it's a fantasy book. It's called Magician. It's a fun book. It's not like this big, heavy reading or something like that. It's just pure escapism. And it's my favorite fantasy book. And so I like to do that in the wintertime. The other thing that I like to do in the wintertime is build with wood. I'm a woodworker. And so one of the things I'm going to be not transitioning to, but I'm going to show a little bit more of, is when I start building displays. This whole summer I built bases for my dioramas, and so for Wolfenstein and also Emma, Carlos, and Ichiro, I built not displays, but stands, right, to elevate them to see them. But now, in the wintertime, I have wood to build an actual display case for them, because the stands are kind of like for a show. But at home, I don't know that I want them on that stand, because it's very big. So I want to make some displays that go around the dioramas that I've built. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I'll show you how to do it. It's not changing a format. It's just part of my process of when I build a diorama. Because I build a diorama, well, I build a model, I build a diorama, I build a display, and then I build a display cabinet. So that's what I'm going to be working on a little bit more later on. And the wintertime, I think, is great for that, What else? Soups, obviously. I just, games and coffee. Playing games in the morning on the weekend with a cup of coffee is like one of the biggest thrills I have in the wintertime, because it's cold outside. It's real snuggly. I'm in the office. I have a fun office for that. And I love playing World War II games. Okay, so that's about it. I wanted to mention that because there's kind of shifts, and I want to know if anybody else has that kind of a shift in their activity based on the season. I imagine you would. That's why I asked the question. It's just those are mine. I'd love to know a little bit about yours. So I've got some comments here. I missed the kind of wood you use for the jig. I'll tell you. Sorry, I am trying to. So John says we just had tons of rain here. I heard about that, John. You're north. You're in Canada. I heard that you guys got a massive bit of rain come over Victoria and BC, like for a week. That's rough. I'm glad that it's kind of settling down. I'm not sure if that's your area, but I think you mentioned you might be up there somewhere. Excellent, great idea, Bill. Thanks very much, Neil. I appreciate it. John says one way to wind wires tight and can be pulled to be loose. Put rod and drill wire hole around the wire. Slide the spring off. Oh yeah. I did that when I was doing the. When I was doing Emma, Carlos, and Ichiro, when I was doing Carlos, his lines. That's a great idea, John. And what John's saying is you can put that on there, that cinches it, and then you can, it just works great. I didn't do that on this. I didn't remember, but that's a really good suggestion, John. I have problems remembering techniques of my own. I will look at stuff that I built 25 years ago. It's in the shop. It's hanging, I don't know how I built that. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. How did you do that? That's just me. John says, I missed that kind of wood you use for the jig. Thank you very much, John. That's really cool. This is walnut. This one, I thought it was walnut, but man, it's so much darker. I think I think this is like it's a scrap of some, because it's very lightweight. My original jig. I think this may be like an African rosewood or something like that, but it's not wengy, but I'm not sure. This I know is American walnut. And I love walnut. Walnut's great. If you're not sure what woods to get, number one, I love buying scrap wood right off the bat. I say that right out because the kind of stuff I build is a lot of times small. I build in miniature most of the time. So scrap wood is an absolutely wonderful resource. Don't think you have to go to the store and spend, because like buying a 6 foot long piece of wood these days is $100. Right? It's $100, one piece of wood. So scraps are a fantastic way to go. And I just have thousands of them. So that's walnut. Great to work with. And if you're looking for a wood, walnut's one that's really nice to work with. When you say machine, you think of metal, but you also machine wood. And when you talk about the properties of wood, you talk in some instances about its machinability. And walnut has good machinability, meaning that it doesn't like to splinter a lot. It's not fractious. In other words, so stiff that if you sometimes go into some woods, it relieves pressure and it breaks. It'll create a crack because there's so much internal pressure in some of these woods as they dry. Walnut's not like that. It's very tame. It's a nice wood. It's not going to chatter when you're working with it. It doesn't splinter out, so you're going to get splinters on your fingers. Brilliant wood. So use walnut. And if you have questions about woodworking, I'm here. I've been doing woodworking as long, well, not quite as long, because I was not woodworking as a kid building models, but I've done probably much more practical woodworking than I've ever done in models. So I know a fair amount about it. Neil says, can you show your collection of figures closer that's on the top shelf behind you? Yeah, I will. I will take some of those pictures and post them. Those aren't ones I've built. There's a couple I've built, but they're just fun figures. Mostly Star Wars and some Marvel figures. I will take a picture of that and post it in my community section. Thanks very much for asking, Neil. And I've also got some Star Wars Black Series figures. I've got Neil, this is a great subject. I'm going to go ahead and do like a little short video or something like that of all my figures. I think that would be fun just to show the figures that I have. Because that's fun. Cool. I'm a wood carver, been carving since the age of 11. That's very, very cool. I've done some carving. It's not my forte, but I like it. Whittling is something that I really, really enjoy. I carved, I think I've showed it before, a little Maltese falcon out of ebony, but it was like with a Dremel, But yeah, I love anything with wood. And so I love that, Neil. That's great. woodworking is really something that I think if more people got into it, pardon me, gosh, that was terrible. I think they'd really find that they enjoyed it. Woodworking, and it doesn't have to be big. I guess that's something that's something I would say. I've been a woodworker for over 30 years, and I still have a tabletop lathe. And everything that I've conceived of building, I've been able to do on that tabletop lathe. It's a little jet tabletop lathe. And the point I'm getting to is you can have an entire career in woodworking and not have to have massive tools. Now, I do have some massive tools. I have some great big tools, but you don't necessarily need it. You can set up a small woodworking shop in a bedroom. Heck, my first shop was in a closet. I didn't have all these tools, but I had a place set aside that I could work. And there's a joy to that. It's not a man space. It's not a she cave. It's not anything like that. It's just a place where you can go to work, and that's what it's for. I love that. I've always tried to create that in my adult life because I didn't necessarily have it as a kid. It's the same to make chainmail. Is it the same to make chainmail? No, chainmail is much different. I've seen how it's made. I've never made chainmail. I have seen people make springs and then weave springs to simulate chainmail, because then you just hammer it down. Very tedious. But real chainmail, I've seen how they do it. I don't have a good scale chainmail. I just haven't come up with that yet. I don't know that I will, but yeah, that's not the way to do it. It's more of the fake stuff that I've seen that looks pretty good. You basically take a bunch of springs, that you've made, and you weave them together, just line after line. Almost looks like knitting, when you're done. And then once they're all done, you fix it down, and then you press them, you flatten them, and they conform, and they look kind of like chainmail. That's a cheap way to do it, but it works, Neil said, looks like Iroko wood. Yeah, I'm not sure, because it's light, and it's light like it would be mahogany, that kind of lightness, but much darker. I don't know, and I don't know Iroko. I've not heard that one, but a lot of woods have like 14 names too. So yeah, I'd like to look that one up. I've got the the wood bark and all that. Old furniture from the dump is good. It sure is. And when you look at old furniture, think of wood as aging, because wood ages. If you look at a lot of the old oak furniture in Europe that's been around for hundreds of years, it's black. Now, it's black for two reasons. Number one, oil from hands can help it turn black, but the wood itself will turn black from oxidation. And it's wonderful. These dark oaks and stuff like that. It's the tannins in the wood that control its color. But when you buy old furniture, like scrap furniture, they have like the leg of a table or something like that. They have found the best, straightest wood for the leg in that table. So if you want to do a smaller turning, then you can do that. As a matter of fact, this week, where is it? I did this. So this was a little turning I did this week because that woodworking thing came on. And what it is I wanted a pointer. And so I made this, it's not focusing worth a hoot, but I made this little pointer, and this piece of maple, that was from a chair leg, just like just like Neil was saying. So old piece of furniture. So the legs of stuff for turnings, wood tops, they try to get this. Now, newer furniture, not so much. It's typically laminates or plywoods. Fine for furniture because of the stability of it. But it's the older furniture that was solid woods that you can actually, reuse for some other new project. And it's a great idea because they're typically hardwoods that they make furniture out of. Fantastic. John, be cool to make furniture, miniature Russian dolls using an ostrich egg shape pull to have another small. Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. That's cool. I love Fabergé eggs. Could make a miniature in the same style. Yep. I like Fabergé eggs. I think they're kind of neat. all that Rococo design and, the stuff inside. I really like that. Chainmail using the rod method. I don't know the rod method. Huh. Then cut and link them. Maybe tubes, like I saw on Lord of the Rings. You can flatten them by pinning them. That's the other. Yeah, and that's what I've seen. Where you actually make the rod, flatten out one side, put a hole in it, put it through, and peen it. That's like how they were traditionally made. And I've done that just to make the ring, just to see what it was like. I made no more because I couldn't see myself doing it. But yeah, that's why chainmail was so expensive, because it was so labor intensive to make. One last question. You mentioned patrons on your live videos, but how do you join? Is it via subscribe? No. So patrons is on. Hey, beautiful segue, by the way. Let me show you that I am just, I got to go. There you go. So there is that's my patron site. So patron is a separate site, and there is a link to it on my page. And what you can do is you can go there to go to patreon.com, and you can find me, Scale Model Craft, and you can join my Patreon page. Now on the Patreon page, I put other stuff. I put like links to my woodworking videos, because I don't know if it's 100, but I've got a whole bunch of woodworking videos as well, because I'm a woodworker. But I don't really highlight that on my YouTube page, because it's about diorama building, and mixing it kind of gets weird. So I have a lot of my woodworking and some of my shop and stuff like that. And I'll have a bunch more on my Patreon page too. There's also different levels of my Patreon, because like this week is, I believe it's a third week. Boy, don't hold me to that, but I think it's a third Friday. We have all patrons in a group build, and it's from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific time. Might not be, the best time for you, but we'll work on that. But what it is it's just a group build, and we just get together, and it's not like this where I'm just yammering. We're all on the screen and can talk and interact. And John is there a lot, and I love it. John Robeck, we become great friends and do a lot of stuff together. It's fun, and he's got brilliant ideas. That's the other thing. In that patron group, when we're having these group builds, we talk about stuff like, holy cow, I got to try that. That's the kind of thing, and that's why I like those group chat things. And I need to do more of them that are more accessible, like on the weekends. And that's something that I'm thinking is coming, especially in the wintertime. It's not going to be like a regular thing, but I think I'll just like open up and advertise it ahead of time and say, hey, it's in, and anybody can come in Patreon, and then we do group builds like that, on weekends. And I think that'll be a lot of fun. So thanks very much for asking, Neil. And it's not too bad. Tonight's hangout is for all patrons. Yes, thank you very much, John. I gotta go. It was a pleasure. Good night. Thanks very much, John. Great contributions today. I really like your ideas, and I'm glad the rain is letting up a little bit up there, and hopefully it dries out a little bit. It's been really nice here, just enough gaps so I can get some yard work done between the rain. So because I believe we're right south of you, and we did not get that much rain. We got a little bit, not as much as you guys. So thanks very much, John. Everybody else, thank you so much. I just appreciate it so much that you come on and listen to me yammer about what I'm doing. I hope I'm giving something back. It's really important that I'm passing knowledge, literally. That's one of the goals, of my channel, is to tell you everything I know. And I can't always think of like, I should tell everybody this, or I should tell you that, or whatever. I don't know. But through interaction and asking questions, then maybe that'll work. And that's what I want to do. I just want to pass on the stuff that I've learned, because I think it's so fun, and I think other people might benefit from it. So thank you so much. Like we said, I'll bring that picture up. This is my patron page. These are my patrons. These folks are great. They pay me money every single month, and they allow me to do what I'm doing. And I hope I'm giving back in a way that is of interest and value to you. And I really appreciate all my patrons. I appreciate everybody, but I'm just saying they're paying, so I gotta give them a little bit more. thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I am going to do a bunch of building this weekend. I got some really fun ideas. These lights are going to be going in. And that's going to be interesting because I'm really not trying to drag this out. But this is the one side of the trench, and this is the inside. This is the outside. And I'm going to have lights all along in here, and that's just one side. The other side is here. That's going to have lights in it. I've got 9 lights built up. I may have to go more because I don't know. But the fun thing is getting the electrical wiring in here, because what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to build some type of jig to hold this upside down securely so I don't damage or destroy anything that I've already done. I've got it figured out. It's going to be fine. But then I've got to take my router and go in here from the bottom and make a channel that I can route my electrical wires in. So on the inside here, this is where the lights are going to be, but these are lanterns. They're not, they're like fuel lanterns. They're not electrical lights. So I can't have any electrical lines going to them. So I got to hide the electrical. So the electrical is going to go straight into this channel that I create on the bottom. Both sides are going to need it. And so that's going to be interesting. And I'll show you how I do it next week, because I'll probably do that this weekend. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, the diorama is coming along good. I had a little discussion with Mrs. Modelcraft today about my next diorama. As I get closer, I'm not close to being done, I guess, but I'm getting closer to the final elements. I can see, the ending coming up. So I kind of got to think of my next one. And I'm thinking it's going to involve something like the command and control rooms in Britain during World War II, where they had the big map down below and then the people moving, all of the, it shows all of England and then the coast of Europe. And it shows them moving troop elements and all that kind of stuff. And above that, in the second floor, you got people looking down on it that are receiving the intel directly. And then they, transfer that down to the people on the floor to move it around. There's maps everywhere. Man, I don't know why. I just think that is a fascinating thing. How they communicated troop movements and where people are and when there's attack coming and all that kind of stuff. I think it's absolutely fascinating. And so I'd kind of like to build one. So that might be the next one. I don't know. I'm not set in any of this. This diorama, the World War I trench diorama, was going to be about the Hound of Mons. And it went with Livens. So that might not be the next one, but I'm thinking about that right now. And when I think about that kind of stuff, I try to get my mind in there. So a lot of fun. Anyway, thank you so much. And I hope to see everybody again next week. Tell your friends. I don't know what the heck to say to close this thing out. I always struggle at this point. I'm like, bye. What the heck do I do? But let me go back through this and make sure I got everybody. And got everybody's comments. Got to go. It was a pleasure. Good night. Thank you very much. Neil says, speak tomorrow sometime. Have a good evening. Thank you very much. You as well. Martin, keep on yammering. Bill, much appreciated. Thanks a lot and see you soon. Cheers from Holland. Thanks very much, Martin. And really looking forward to seeing more on that Falk. That's great. I'm really liking your pictures, and your paint job is awesome. John, thanks, Bill. Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to tonight. Thanks, Eric. Really appreciate it. Have a good one, sir. Thanks, Eric. And Neil, in the case, look at War Room Museums in London, Churchill's bunker under Downton Street. Yes, and that's one of the ones that I've seen, and it's really cool. Great idea. Thanks, Martin. John, love that diorama idea. Hope it's in a stolen castle. See, I like that idea too. Remember in the third Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, and the German one was in the old castle. That's a fantastic idea, John. Maybe it's not just those cement walls. I don't want to do a German one necessarily. I do want to do a British one, but it certainly could be in, like an old villa or an old classic, British home that, like Downton Abbey or something like that, that they had taken over during the war, because that happened, quite often. It was necessary for protecting the country. So I love that idea, John. We got to talk about that tonight, sir. That's cool. Mark, hey, thank you, sir. Thanks very much for coming on. I really appreciate that. I missed you earlier on. I just maybe didn't see you there. And then Neil, Bletchley Park, yes, Bletchley. And I love that because it wasn't like this big mansion. It was like one centralized location, but then a bunch of other buildings around it. Love the movies out of there about the Enigma. The one that's popular, of course, is with Mr. Cumberbatch. But I saw an earlier one on Netflix years ago, the same kind of thing about Bletchley Park. And it was, boy, what was I don't know the actor. Gosh darn, I'm trying to think and I can't. But she was in The Mummy, the first Mummy, and love her. And she was also, anyway, great movie. So if you guys are looking for movies about that kind of stuff, those are a couple of good ones. Anything about Bletchley Park, it's like Enigma or something like that. And then, of course, The Confidence. I can't remember the one with Cumberbatch. Anyway, it's on Netflix right now. So anyway, yep, I love the Enigma. I've wanted to build an Enigma machine in miniature for a long time. Not 35th scale, because I don't know that there's enough. I mean, you'd be able to see it. Yeah, sure. But I'd like to build, something like your scale, Neil, 1/6. That would be pretty cool. I think you could get a lot of detail out of a 1/6 scale Enigma machine. Not working, but obviously I think it'd be cool. Imitation game. Thank you so much, Mark. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. And in 1/6 scale Enigma, I think would be great, Neil. Do you do any turnings? That's something we're going to have to talk about tomorrow. I've got a little tiny Unimat lathe. It's a little jeweler's lathe. It's an old one, but it turns brass. And man, you could do a knockout Enigma machine on something like that. Anyway, see, this is how it goes. Like on those Patreon talks, it's just like cool ideas and stuff. So thank you again, everybody. I really appreciate your comments. I really appreciate you liking the channel and giving it a thumbs up. And yeah, there will be a replay certainly. And so if you missed any part of it, there will be a replay that I'll post, I think around 4 it takes to process. I screwed that up last week. I don't know what happened. I mean, you could still see this, but I will do it the way that I typically do today. So thank you very much. We will see you. Have a wonderful weekend, and I hope you get on the bench. We'll see you.